We are all full of authentic points of view. Myself alone have at least 22. They come from the things that we have been through. Those things can either make or break you. Life is full of ups and downs. It's our choice to either smile or frown. Please choose to smile today, because it's one thing that's free to give away. People say that life isn't hard, it's what you make of it. But what if only struggle surrounds you? What can you take from it? Life can be hard and some things aren't fair. Please listen to others just to be aware. All I'm saying, you never know what someone's going through. Just because they look happy doesn't make it true. Hopefully this podcast will help you see you are not alone, you have at least got me. We are more alike than you may know, but if we stay quiet, we will never grow. Don't ever give up, because you got this. If you quit, think of all the opportunities that you could miss. Hey everybody, and welcome to Authentic Points of View. I'm Danielle Boer, your host, as always. Woo-hoo. All right, so I'm excited about today's guest. She's different, which is exciting, because there's been so many life coaches on, which life coaches are amazing, because I'm becoming one, but she's different. So yay for uniqueness. It's so awesome. Okay, Mandy Hornsby. She is the creator and writer of My Sassy Starfish and Don't Tell Maw Maw podcast.
Yeah, Maw Maw.
Yay! Where she talks about the things she loves: mindful living, history, and Mississippi Gulf living. Welcome, Mandy, to the show.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. Thank you for having me. This is always fun to be on someone else's show. Whenever you're putting everyone on your hot seat, it's always fun to be on someone else's.
It is. It's like, to me, it's like it's just like fun, because you just sit back and you're like, I don't have to be in control. Woohoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not editing this episode.
That's it, is the editing. You're right. I'm like, have fun. It's on you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, okay. Now, what do you love about the subject history?
Well, it's been like all history, almost all the time, not always. I also teach English. So I've always liked history. Back when I was in 5th grade, my teacher actually assigned us a project to do a short report, like handwritten on the notebook paper, because I'm that old, about our family history. So that kind of got me started with genealogy, because when I was born, I had a lot of my grandparents were still alive and great grandparents. So
Awesome.
My grandpa loaded me in the car and took me to the old Biloxi cemetery and took me to visit his sister. And, and since then I've always loved history. I have like a thing for like historical fiction too, in certain situations. And it's just always been interesting to see parallels. And there's always like some weird serendipity that happens with history. Like, what are the chances that this happened at that exact time?
Yes. Okay. Now that sounds interesting. So yeah, that does sound cool. So, all right. How many degrees do you have, and how long did you go to school for?
So I guess I should preface this by saying I'm a millennial, so no 1 degree is ever enough in our situation. True. There's no degree that's gonna like be enough to get you the perfect job, because that's just the way our life has gone as millennials. Actually, I will preface this by saying, to have a love for genealogy and history, you don't have to have a degree. Some really good local researchers I know actually just picked it up after they retired. They had other careers before this. So mainly, I think if you just have like a sense of making sure that you check your resources and kind of have a good BS monitor, you're okay with studying history. But my actual undergraduate degrees in history and English, I have a master's in history, and then I graduated with that master's. So I did like 5 years straight of college, because I went straight to my master's, and I did it in Edinburgh. And Edinburgh master's programs full-time are 1 year instead of 2, like most US programs. Wow. And when I came back, My fancy degree was good for working at Books A Million coffee shop.
Oh,
And that's only because I worked at a coffee shop the summer before I left for Scotland. That was my most employable skill when I graduated in 2008. So I worked in the public library for a while, and then I went back and got my alternate route for teaching. I worked as a school librarian, and then I got a CELTA for teaching ESL because I got tired of being a school librarian. And then now I'm actually working on my master's in library science with a graduate certificate in archives. So I guess that's about like, 8 years total of school, roughly, once I finish this program in May.
Oy. Well, good for you.
I have like all the school.
That's amazing, though. That's really good. That's, first of all, learning is amazing and great. And that keeps us going and young and smart. So that's awesome. That's a lot of school, but it's awesome for you. And it's really interesting that I didn't even know that there was some of the degrees like the one you're going for. I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now,
and it is actually like a useful one. You know, it talks about budgeting and grant writing and, you know, working with some of the classes I didn't get to take it because I'm doing the specialist part of it. They have degrees working with like underrepresented populations as well, like classes in that in my program.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow, that's so wonderful. That's great that you can help and make a difference. And that's what I'm all about, is helping people. So that's really wonderful that they focus on that. Okay, so explain, I mean, lots of people might know, but like explain what does genealogy mean? Like, what are you doing when you're looking up your genealogy?
So genealogy is basically the study of the people who lived before you and your family. There's usually two approaches to genealogy where people will go back and just go direct descendant to direct descendant. So like your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-grandparents. And then there's also another camp of genealogists, which we also see where I work, that just want to find everyone in the family to a certain extent. Like say they want to know who all their cousins are, for example, or all their grandparents, what happened to all their grandparents' siblings' children, for example. So so genealogy can kind of be researched going backwards through time, or it can also expand out like an umbrella almost, depending on what you're most interested in.
Ooh-wee. That's cool. And so I think like most of them have a little leaf or something, which makes sense because you're looking at the family tree. So isn't that clever? It's so clever to me. I like the why of stuff, and I'm like, ooh, that's smart. So so that's, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's also like pedigree charts, which are basically family trees, but in genealogy we call it a pedigree chart, which is kind of weird because I'm like, we're not,
dogs.
We're not livestock or dogs, but okay. But if you look at like the ancestry websites, if you print a family tree, it'll call it a pedigree chart.
Oh, okay. So let me ask you this though, because it's fascinating. So if I'm looking up somebody from the 1800s, we didn't have a lot of, like, how do they know these things? Like, say the person, no offense to the person, say the person didn't do anything like even work a job or write something or like go on a boat. Some of them traveled on the Titanic or whatever, and then they have documentation of that or made like a big thing in history or whatever. How would they find out information from 1800s when we didn't really have pictures? Like, we didn't have all that stuff back then. Maybe we had pictures. I don't know. I'm sorry. And that's sad. I was a photographer and I don't know when that was discovered. But the point is, like, we don't have Facebook. We don't have all this stuff. There's no documentation of them. How do they find out these things?
Some people get lucky and some people have like struggle. Like we see like a lot of people that and actually people that are noteworthy too. Sometimes they're kind of hard to get tracked down in certain phases of their life. But what I find is there's not too bad on the 1800s because there's the census.
Okay.
Census is where you go and, every 10 years and you tell, say how many people in your household, where you're from, what you do. And the government holds on to it for like 50 something, 70 something. Oh, it's actually 72 years or something like that, roughly. And then they'll release it to the public. So they do have the census, except for the 1890 census, it was burned. So there's no 1890 census. Gravesite records are useful, church records. We really rely on Catholic records where I'm from because we have a really heavy Catholic population because we were, you know, and where I'm from, instead of being a British colony, we were a French colony for a long time. So we find Catholic records. Sometimes historic newspapers help, but don't expect it to be like an obituary like you would see today. You might see a passing comment where they paid their taxes. There are records from the 1800s, like in my department, where we can actually see marriage. We have microfilm marriage records, interment records, wills, some land plots. Some of it, too, people have to kind of get out of their comfort zone and go and have that awkward conversation at the courthouse with usually people who can be very mean. I know that kind of seems like a overarching. I've just had a lot of weird experiences at the courthouse researching. So, so there's just different things. Sometimes you might luck out and there's a book that was published in the 1990s that someone had referenced, a record that doesn't exist anymore. Say it was destroyed in a hurricane or a fire or something like that. But it's sitting there on a random shelf in some library just waiting to be found.
Whoa, that is interesting. And I did not know, you're teaching me so much, that the census was burnt in 1890. Like everything was destroyed?
Yeah, there's only maybe a few fragments of it. But yeah, the 1890 census does not exist.
Oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory.
I know. Well, I'll have to tell you about some from my department. We have.
Oh, yes. Please do. We'll talk off air because this is interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to talk off air on that one. But
yeah. Wow. Okay. Whoa. Holy moly. Okay. That's awesome. So, oh my goodness. I'm still thinking about that. Okay. Okay, how far back can y'all go? Like, because you said 1800s have census. So how far back is it possible to even find out a name, let alone anything else?
So I have people, and actually I have my great uncle claims he's gone back to Charlemagne, but I'm not sure on that one. It gets a little precarious after that. I have definitely seen people easily where I live go back into the 1700s, late 1600s. Wow. And some of it's just a special case because where I live, and it just depends on too where you live as well and where they came from. Also, if they have any revolutionary past, there's a organization called the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution. You have to like match yourself with someone who fought in the American Revolution. So if they had any links with that, there's more than likely to be records because that organization makes such a push to keep, the genealogy fresh and keep it up to date. So it just depends. I did have a cousin. I was very lucky. Before I was a school librarian, I did work in the department I work in and run now for a year. And one of the women I worked with was my grandmother's second cousin. And she had traced one side of our family all the way back. She took a train to Quebec back in the 80s to research. Like she was hardcore. So I have a lot to thank, Miss Mary Louise Atkinson for doing that. And she also had stories about like my great grandparents that were just nuts that I never would have known if I hadn't talked to her. So it's really interesting. And then once you get back to like the 1800s, a lot of us, especially if you're talking American and Canadian genealogy, we came from somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
So then you get into like language barriers and passenger lists and stuff like that.
Wow. Okay. That is pretty cool. So, and how cool is that you worked with your grandmother's second cousin?
Mm-hmm. She was my grandmother's second cousin. Yeah. She,
how amazing.
She is interesting. She started working in the library, like the circulation for the library later on, and then she worked there from like the 80s all the way through Katrina. And then her last few years, they transferred her and had her in local history. And she would just talk to all her patrons, and they could, like, if it was from a local family, she could just tell you all about them.
Wow. That's so cool. Yeah, she was like a walking, like,
yes,
like
she was in a
reports in
walker
my
and
head.
everything by then, but she was like sharp mentally. But I would have to go, like, if she needed like microfilm or something from the back, I'd have to go fetch it.
Oh my gosh. That's so fun. And I just want to tell you that I love your energy. You have awesome energy. Just wanted to let you know. So, you're welcome. Let me ask you a question. Okay. So this is a controversial subject. I don't really talk about these kind of subjects, but do you feel like high schools teach 100% accurate history, of like the country or the world? Do you think that's accurate? No. Okay.
No.
I don't either. But I was just wondering.
I will say, in fairness, they have a short amount of time. And now that, since No Child Left Behind, they like are stuffing these kids with just test facts, basically, so they could regurgitate them back onto a test. So there's that problem. And then also there's a lot of controversy now with like teaching race, race theory and things like that. And all that matches with history.
Yep.
There's a lot. And actually, I was really lucky when I was studying my undergraduate. So the university I went to for my undergraduate is a very, it was started out as a teacher's college. So a lot of their liberal arts classes kind of connect. Like you could take them as a teacher as well if you're going to teach high school. We have a Mississippi history class. I don't know if they still teach it. I think they might have moved it to a different grade. I think they might teach it in 8th grade now or something, but they used to teach it in 9th grade as a half credit class. And I took basically the college version of Mississippi history. And they definitely left a lot out on mine in my Mississippi history class, especially related to like, Jim Crow and, race relations and things like that.
Yeah. So my boyfriend is from Meridian, Mississippi. And so he tells me a lot of stories that I am like utterly shocked by, just shocked. And even into the 80s and 90s of how it is. And like even being in the South is so different for me because I was living in Maryland and then I lived in Ohio, which is actually on like close to the Mason-Dixon line. So that's a touchy subject. Like that's weird area too. And because my family's from West Virginia, but it was when he tells me some things of how things were happening, even in the 80s and 90s, I'm like, it's like a different world. He said it was like, no offense, I'm not trying to offend you, but like where he's from and the communities he's from, it wasn't active history. You know what I'm saying? Like they were still stuck in the past of how things were and how it's so divided and everything, even then. And I'm like, it's so sad. And, so, okay, we'll get off of that because it could go down rabbit holes, but yeah, people don't know wherever you live, and I have listeners in so many countries. So wherever you live, we don't know what people around the globe are going through, or in different parts of even the country, even parts of your state in Mississippi, totally different, like Gulf Coast is way different from where he is from and stuff like that. And so sometimes we don't realize what other people are going through. So that's why I talk about kindness, because people could be struggling with some really, poverty, like where he's
the poverty
from
is very, so bad in Mississippi.
Horrible. And it's just sad. And it's like, people are so judgmental and they say like, oh, how can you, be this age and still get government assistance, or how can you do this, or you're lazy? No, because first of all, you can work 40 hours a week and still not be able to afford to live. So you don't judge, you know what I'm saying? Like you judging people like, okay, I'm a big person and they're like, big people are lazy. No, I bust my butt. I run around like crazy, like more than the skinny people. They're sitting down. I don't sit down. So you can't judge a book by its cover, librarian. You can't. Nope. That was a corny pun. Nope. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you would be horrified to find out what I make with all the degrees I have. because I still live mainly because one of the reasons because I still live in Mississippi, and then just, how culture appreciates educators and librarians. But yeah, you would be like absolutely horrified.
Horrible. No, I would.
So.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not right. It's anyway. Okay. Again, we'll go down a rabbit hole. It's not fair. And, but I'm thankful that you're doing what you're doing, even though, you're not getting what you deserve. So this is a selfish question. And I'll tell you why in a second. Can you tell us a few facts from World War II that maybe we don't know? Maybe it's like not hidden facts, but like something that's not well known.
I have a couple. I looked at the questions beforehand, and I was glad you gave them to me ahead of time. Normally, I can fly off the cuff, but there's a couple. So I do have to preface this by saying I did study World War II in my master's degree, but I studied like Scottish women during World War II.
And the
ones the ones that were volunteering with the Young Women's Christian Association, basically.
Yeah.
So I like social history as a whole anyway. So basically social history is, say I got like put in a time machine and sent back, I would kind of know how things were going on the day to day from a place and the regular people's point of view. That's kind of what social history is. That's just so I'm not all stuck on the big battles of, the battles and the troops, and the movements of World War II, but there are some interesting facts. One thing that's a couple of things locally connected. The Higgins boats were the ones that were modeled off the boats they used in the D-Day landing were modeled off the Higgins boats, which are flat bottom bayou boats. They're used to like go through the swamps in Louisiana. They were perfect for the amphibious landing at the Normandy beaches because they could get the troops close enough to the beach to let them out. And I think that is one of the reasons that the World War II Museum for America, the National World War II Museum, is in New Orleans.
Oh, wow. Oh, how cool is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious. Tell us a fact about the Scottish women. Because again, listeners are everywhere. Like everybody listen, not everybody. I wish everybody please listen to this podcast. No, everybody does not listen. And hers too. Yeah. We're going to talk about hers too. That's a false claim. Everybody does not listen, but different countries do listen. So yeah, what's a fact about the Scottish women that you learned?
What was interesting, so whenever I was there, like I said, chose the Young Women's Christian Association, and they did all kinds of stuff to volunteer. They were a massive organization. Scotland was still a pretty religious country then. Not, the UK and Europe is not as religious as it used to be now, but back then it was still a really big organization. And these women moved some money, and these women did some things. So one of the things they did, and you have the classic YMCA hostels. You think about that, we have that still in the U.S. Well, the Young Women's Christian Association took the lead in creating housing for the Women's Land Army. So what the Women's Land Army was is they would take these women from the cities, these young girls. It was one of the groups that had the youngest entry age. So you could join it when you were 16 or 17. The other groups, you had to be older. They would send them out to the farms to replace the field workers so they could go to war, basically. Oh, wow. And Scotland is pretty rural, pretty, pretty full of, different farmlands, different type of agriculture. So the Young Women's Christian Association would basically find the houses, staff the houses, and manage the houses for the Women's Land Army, which was pretty cool. And it got really funny because during war, there's, people like to party and live hard during war. So a lot of Polish soldiers were trained in Scotland. So they had a problem with trying to keep the women away from the Polish soldiers. Oh, I read some some oral history accounts, and it was hilarious. Some of this was funny. These they had these stodgy house moms that had to keep these young ladies in line in the countryside.
Women gone wild. That's so funny. Oh crap. Okay. I love this. Thank you for coming on, because I know we're not done, but I'm just really excited because I was like, no offense, everybody that's into history, no offense. I am a nurse. So I'm my brain isn't like that. You know what I'm saying? We're all different. And I'm very ADD. So I find this very fascinating. So that's awesome. That's the whole point. Don't ever be closed-minded. That's what my show's about. And I was being I'm not being closed-minded, but I was thinking like, you know, hey, but your energy is so great. So this is so fun and I'm learning so much. So don't ever not do something just because you think something before it happens. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's my advice to myself. Okay. So now, alrighty then. What are some similarities? So when you're in Scotland, and you said already one thing, that the schooling was a year instead of 2 years. Wow, that's intense. And then what are some other, just a couple of things that's different between Scotland and here? It could be anything, culture-wise, food-wise, history-wise. It doesn't have to all be about history, but anything, you know, how you said they were religious a lot, but what other things kind of differentiate? And I also have an uncle through marriage. He's my aunt's husband. He is from Scotland. So, how was the language barrier? I know it's English, but the accents are very thick and I feel like they talk fast. So was it hard for you to get adjusted at first?
Yes and no. So where I lived, I was in Edinburgh, which is the capital. Edinburgh is kind of like their accents are a little less harsh. They still have Scottish accents, but Edinburgh, I find, but what they did was, I lived in student housing since I was an international student. They guarantee you student housing your first year, basically. So
Wonderful.
I was living in student housing, great place, literally living next to a castle. Can't make this shit up. Literally living next to the castle. It was amazing.
Hell yeah.
On the Royal Mile, which is like the main drag. It was old. It was like older than the country. It was older than America. This dorm I was living in, basically student housing. And we had, we'd have, you know, people that would come to like fix, like say, like my window seal wasn't sealing right. So the gentlemen that would come, I had no idea what they were saying to me. They were from outside the city and like the general Midlothian area. No idea. Our cleaning lady, it took me a minute. I eventually caught on to her accent.
Yeah.
But if you find that the Scottish people, like depending on, it's like anywhere in the U.S., even Southern accents are not all the same. So it's kind of the same with them. Like people from Glasgow are different, sound different than people from Edinburgh. People from the Highlands sound different than, you know, the people from the Lowlands.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
That is interesting, but that's a good point because that's how it is in England too. So I love Adele. Okay. She's Cockney, right? So she says like, thank you and stuff like that. But there's different, and I don't know all of them, but there's different areas and they all have different accents that are distinct to that area, just like you said. So when I first talked to someone from Alabama, no offense, Alabama, I did not understand what this guy was saying. I had no clue. And I just moved from the north. And so we didn't speak like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't used to hearing a lot of people from Alabama. So I had to literally ask this guy, I don't know where he is or what his name is, but I had to ask him to repeat himself like several times because I was trying to be engaged and pay attention, but I just didn't get it. And when I first moved here, nobody understood me. Nobody. So I had patience. I worked in Decatur, Georgia. If y'all ever heard of Decatur, they say Decatur where it's greater. Lots of rappers are from there too, which is cool. It's a really beautiful town. It has a lot of history there too. But there, like, nobody understood me. I would take care of the patients. I would ask them questions and I would say stuff like home and phone. Okay. People made fun of me. So crazy. So that's how I talked. I'd be like, do you feel safe at home? And they're like, what the heck is a home? They don't know what a home is. That's not a word to them. So therefore, this lady from Southern Georgia would come translate for me, English to English. She would translate and I'd be like, really, what's happening? I was so confused. But yeah, that's how it is. Just like, if you bring somebody from Boston here, they're not going to understand, you know, like we all have different dialects, just like in Germany. I lived in Germany. Love it. I lived in Germany twice. And there's different dialects in Germany, like everywhere, every country, I believe, especially Africa, because there's so many countries in the continent of Africa, but even Australia, like everybody has a different meaning for things or stuff like that. So that's why you have to be careful when you travel, because you could offend someone or say something that is not bad where you live, and then they're like, oh, that's the worst thing you could ever say, and you're like, what? I didn't know. So
Yeah. A lot of people ask me if I'm from the South, and I'm like, yeah, obviously. It just comes out in different ways if I'm upset or if I'm worked up about something. And then also where I live, though, there's 2 different military bases. There's a lot of movement where I'm from. So we're kind of watered down a little, I guess you could say, our Southern accents where I'm from.
Yeah, I was going to say, no offense. You do not sound like definitely how his family speaks, and they're from Mississippi. I couldn't understand my boyfriend for a long time. I mean, I'm serious. Like when we first got together, he knows that. And how I speak. And first of all, like I'm white. Well, obviously, hi everybody, I'm white. I'm white and he's not white. And so he had never been with somebody that wasn't white. I mean, that wasn't black. So that was hard for us to, like, not me, because I've dated a lot of black men. That sounds bad. A lot. Woo. That's a different show. No, I'm so silly. I'm sorry. That's a different show entirely. So I have dated men, from race, African American men. So it wasn't different to me, but the Mississippi, the accent and how his family talks, like they cut off the end of stuff. They don't say the last 2 letters of the words. And I'm like, what? Like I don't understand. Yeah. And like, yeah. And then stuff is like smushed together and you're just like I never knew that it was spelled Quitman, because that's not how it sounds to me. It sounds like Quickman. I don't know.
Yeah.
When he says it, I love him.
I knew exactly by reading it when you sent me that email what it was.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. And then so like, I love him. I'm not talking bad about him. He's so smart. He's so intelligent. I'm not talking bad about anybody. I'm not saying. I'm just because
we brought that up in our podcast. We said no matter someone's socioeconomics or the way they speak, it does not indicate their intelligence.
No,
it is not an indicator
not.
of intelligence, for sure.
No. Yeah, it definitely isn't, because there's some words that, you know, he knows that I might not know. And then there's also slang. So where he's from, he speaks in different terms than I do. That doesn't mean that you don't know what you're talking about, because he does. He's very intelligent. He looks everything up. That's what he looks he actually looked into his genealogy too. But he looks everything up because he wants to have information. So he's very, very smart, and his family's very smart. So you never judge, again, librarian, a book by its cover, because just because people aren't pronouncing the words, or I cannot spell, okay, but I'm not stupid. I think I'm smart, but I cannot spell worth a darn. So that doesn't make you stupid. Everybody has strengths, and just because we don't speak like each other, or the words, or like I said, like they literally cut off letters of the words and say it like different, but that doesn't mean that they're lack knowledge, or they're stupid, or they don't understand things. That's just how they speak, and that's okay. We all are different for a reason. If everybody was the same, boring.
It was so boring. And I was telling someone the other day, actually, I was like, it took a while, but, it took like 2 Oxford graduate professors, several degrees, and learning to be an ESL teacher to take the trailer out of me. So, I mean, it's, like you wouldn't know, like speaking to me, I grew up like in a trailer in South Mississippi, so.
Yeah. And guess what? It's all good. That's what made you.
You are right.
You are. Right.
Yep.
That's what made you who you are. Who cares? That's the whole point. Nobody would look at me as a nurse right now, like, and say, that's why I do this. That's why I'm starting to become a speaker and a life coach and all this stuff. And I want to start talking to high schools. And nobody would look at me and be like, oh yeah, she lived in a homeless shelter. Yes, I did when I was pregnant with my second one. She has 50, 100 baby daddies. Just joking. I only have a few. 3. That's a lot. Like I witnessed my brother commit suicide on the telephone. All these things. Like you would never know that I went through this stuff. But guess what? I did. And each situation made me who I am today. All the things that we go through, like you living in a trailer is still a home. Guess what? You can have a happier home in a trailer than people that are in an abusive relationship in a mansion, right? Or, it doesn't matter what situation you grow up in. It matters your values and your morals and your everything. Like that stuff matters. Like, who gives a hoot nanny if you grew up in with wolves? I'm just joking. I don't know. Mowgli
or whatever.
Yeah. Who cares? No, I'm just saying like, yeah, but really quick, I skipped my grandma. Dang, I'm sad. Okay. The reason why I asked about World War II is because my grandmother and my grandfather were both in World War II, and that's how they met. And she was a nurse and he was a prisoner of war. How cool is that? And in Germany, she took care of him as a nurse. So that's cool. And then they found each other in the States. So amazing. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's why I asked about World War II.
Oh yeah, we love that type of stuff. Like, it's like all these like connections. There was actually several big German POW camps in Mississippi. I think there were 2 or 3 of them. And there was one, there is a trail you can still take in DeSoto National Forest, Tuxachanie Trail. And there's still like these big cement, like slots in a hill. And that was like from the POW camp.
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
That was like one of their work projects, I believe.
Wow. Oh, that's so awesome. Well, not awesome that people were prisoners of war. But that's how I was made, because if my grandfather never went through that, he would have never met my grandmother. So there we go. We go through trauma and different situations, and then it can turn into something beautiful. So, all right. Now, the library that you work at is, what is it called? And I know you said it's like one of the historic, it's like the oldest building or something like that, or
it's so
oldest school?
My library, whenever I worked in the school system, it was like the oldest, like one of the oldest still continuous used buildings for schools. That's a whole other podcast I can go on about. But the library I work at actually is a replacement for Hurricane Katrina, so it's only been built since 2011. It was just completed. So I work for the Harrison County Public Library System, and I work in the Local History and Genealogy Department, and it's located in downtown Biloxi. Now, our collection is kind of Biloxi heavy, but we are actually the genealogy department for the county library system. So we try to help and service everyone where we can. Also, I do have to say, all these things I've said in the podcast are my beliefs, not my employer's. I do have to say that.
Yeah. I understand.
As per our HR manual.
Yeah. Yes, they do not. Well, you didn't say the name of it, so it's all good. I think you didn't, but that's okay. Yeah. So no, these are your beliefs, right? So let me just ask you this, just because he told me the effects of Hurricane Katrina on him, and you are more on the Gulf Coast. He was in the more of the middle of the state, closer to Alabama-ish, I think. So how did it affect you? Where were you in your studies? Were you abroad when this happened, or were you here, and were you in Mississippi when Hurricane?
I was in Mississippi. It's a crazy story. Y'all are gonna think I'm dumb, but so
no,
I was in Hattiesburg.
Oh my gosh, I know somebody from Hattiesburg. Okay,
I was in Hattiesburg because I did my 4 years at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
And I came home for Hurricane Katrina because I didn't know what else to do, because my family, I guess, goes down with the house. I was lucky because my family, no one in my immediate, well, my great uncle, but my parents and my grandparents did not lose their homes. So I do have to preface this, but I stayed with who is my husband. I stayed with his family, and that house, while we were all in it, it's a 2-story house, flooded about 3 feet with us inside. So that was pretty nuts. There was, they live in a cul-de-sac, and basically this is the error, the fatal error a lot of people made that we also made, was that, the water didn't get that high in Hurricane Camille, which was the big hurricane that hit in 69. And they're pretty high on a hill. Like if you see for South Mississippi is pretty flat. They're kind of built up on a hill. And it was crazy because the pier from the Air Force Base across the bay washed up. All the houses at the end of the cul-de-sac were slabs.
Oh.
It was nuts. And there was people died in those houses, like 5 houses down. So it was it was such a terrible thing. And then you have a guilt afterwards if your house like is still standing.
Right.
But you're still dealing with all these feelings because there's still a lot of loss, even if you didn't lose your physical house. There's a lot of loss of memories, places you grew up, the way things are. It still doesn't look the same. And it's been, 15 plus years.
Well, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that, that happened and so many people lost their lives. And it was horrific seeing it from, especially New Orleans, and seeing it from the outside and seeing it on cameras and seeing people float by and seeing just, oh my gosh, people on top of houses and asking for help, or like all the people and the pets that died. And just, it's devastating. And, I'm sorry that happened, but then I know that, oh my gosh, I think like even New Orleans, they're still trying to rebuild, like still doing, like you said, it's not the same. So, wow. And I bet did you guys lose a lot of history in the hurricane? I mean, wow.
Yeah, there's several layers on the Gulf Coast where I live where we've lost history. One was Hurricane Camille in 69, and then they did something called urban renewal, especially in the city of Biloxi in the 70s. So what that was redoing the streets, making like these bigger, like blockier buildings. They bulldozed several really cool old buildings that it just makes me cringe thinking that we don't have those anymore. And then Hurricane Katrina. So it's kind of a game we play in my department where it's like, was it Camille, Katrina, or urban renewal that did that building?
Oh no.
That building in.
Oh no, it's a bad game. That's not a good game.
It's not a good game, but there are things like, so my department got heavily damaged during Hurricane Katrina, but when it was started in the public library by a woman named Marilla Powell. She's still kicking. She's still around, but she retired right before Katrina in 2005. So that department in the Biloxi Library and Cultural Center, it was like shared with a museum at the time. Wow. It was a really modern building. And basically the collection was stuffed wherever it could fit. So when the building was named unsalvageable, basically, they built a new building. And when they built that building, they actually made us like an actual proper archive. Like, so we have a proper archive room with collapsible shelving, a fire suppression system, a reading room patrons can come and sit in. So I guess you could say there's like a silver lining in it. Because we're better equipped now, at least, to hold what we salvaged and what we get from here on out.
Well, yeah, like, unfortunately, like what I was talking about is like when situations happen, it doesn't ever fix what, we can't bring back the lives that were lost or the information that was lost, but you do learn from it, hopefully. And then you can grow and you can change and you can try to prepare for the future. So, now I think that's so cool that you were in Vietnam. Okay. What is a CELTA certificate and how long were you in Vietnam teaching English? I know you came back and did it online, I guess, but how long were you physically there?
I was in Vietnam physically 3 months. It was back in 2017. Wow. And my house, like just this particular pocket of where I live, the house values weren't going up. Like our house value was too low to sell. Like I think we would have been a lot of money in the hole if we'd sold our house. Because what the plan was I would go set up in Vietnam and then my husband would sell everything, store whatever, sell the house and meet me like within 6 months. But within 3 months between my car value and the house value, it just was not going to happen. So I came back and then you know how adult life happens. I've lost several grandparents since then. Several crazy things have happened to my family since then. So here I am. And then after doing all the online teaching, I'm burnt out on teaching. So my priorities have kind of changed since about 2020. So, but the CELTA is basically a Cambridge teaching certificate for teaching English to other speakers of other languages. It's mainly for adults, but if you want to go work at a language center for children, that's what they take overseas.
Oh, wow.
So they do different pop-up campuses, and they have a couple of places in bigger cities like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles that are, always doing courses. But they have a pop-up course in Phoenix, and my best friend / one of my podcast co-hosts lives in Phoenix. So I went and stayed with her. I finished my last year, as a school librarian. I packed up a few days later and went and stayed with her for 4 weeks to do my CELTA. So I would just get on the metro from Tempe and take the metro into downtown Phoenix and do the coursework for that. And it's nice. It doesn't expire. It's kind of expensive, but it's a nice little piece of paper to have, because it gave me the option to not just work at international schools.
Wow.
To look at jobs overseas.
You're so smart. Listen here, people that live in trailers. That does not define you. I almost got a trailer a long time ago. My kids were going to be ashamed of it. Guess what? You got a house, you got water, you got food, you got heat, all the things you need, you got clothes. Get over it. Oh, sorry. That's not nice.
It was a good example. My parents worked really hard, and they built their dream house on family land, a little further north in the county when I was in about 4th or 5th grade. So that was a good example to have as well. It also makes me appreciate the house I'm in now. I am very fortunate. I love my house, but a lot of people I know have a mentality of they have to keep up with everyone, get the bigger house, build the house, buy the land, build the house.
Yeah.
And besides dealing with my HOA and our physical location, I love our house. I am happy to be here.
Awesome. That's so wonderful. See, I love it. And it gives you, you have, like I said, you have some great energy, and just you're so smart, you're so knowledgeable, and you are so humble. You're not I know all this stuff and you don't know diddly squat. I don't know who says diddly squat. I do. But, and I also say hootenanny. Ask anybody that knows me if they say hootenanny. No, they don't. They're the what? What's a nanny? What's a hootenanny? I say whatever I want. Be yourself, everybody. That's what I do.
Your thing.
I be myself. Okay. So, see, that wasn't proper English. I be myself. But I do be myself. Okay. All right. Now, I'm so silly, really silly. I like to be silly though, because it helps me get through the times. And I have kidney stones right now, so it does not feel good. Yeah, it's all good. Okay, so tell me the most interesting fact about Mississippi that you know. It could be Gulf Coast, anywhere, and I don't care where it is in Mississippi. What is the most interesting fact or your favorite fact about Mississippi?
Well, I know more about the Gulf Coast than I do.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
But there's some interesting things. Our man-made beach is the longest man-made beach in the world. It's 21 miles from Ocean Springs to Henderson Point and past Christian. So that's kind of interesting. Barks Root Beer was founded and bottled in Biloxi originally. Until they sold it to Coca-Cola in the 90s. And so there's several different different interesting things. There's a lot of one interesting fact related to World War II. So we know that during World War II, the Japanese people along the West Coast were interned in camps in the middle of the U.S.
Oh.
So by FDR. FDR did a lot of good things. This was not one of them, for sure. And there were 2 units of Japanese American soldiers trained, and one of them was trained in Camp Shelby.
Wow.
Which is in right south of Hattiesburg.
Oh, wow. How cool. There's a lot of famous, not that being famous is, the most important thing. There's a lot of famous, awesome people that are from Mississippi. And I only know that now because I date a guy, of course, from Mississippi.
Has he told you about Morgan Freeman?
No. Did he?
Morgan Freeman. Morgan
think he
Freeman
probably
has a blues club in the Delta, and he just opened one in downtown Biloxi called Ground Zero.
Oh, that's
They're
so
doing
awesome.
the
I
blues
didn't.
festival this weekend, but I don't know. It's supposed to rain
Oh,
tomorrow, so
oh,
it's a
that'll
blues
be
club.
fun though. That's so
Hmm.
cool. I didn't know. I think I knew he was from there. There's a lot of people from even where David Ruffin is from Meridian,
Yeah.
Mississippi. Yeah. So he tells me like stuff like facts like that, and I'm like, that is so cool. So because no offense, I never heard of Meridian before or any of the things you're saying. Hattiesburg. Well, now I have, because every time somebody says they're from Mississippi now, I say, where are you from? Because he's from there. But I knew Jackson, Mississippi. I think that's the only place I knew back in the day. But that's the thing that's really cool, is that when you expand yourself and you talk to different people, you can learn so much. And it's really fascinating how connected we all are, though. So it really doesn't matter, where you're from or like what your background is, because his background is entirely different than mine, but we have so much in common. Like we are connected on a level that I've never been connected with anybody else. So that stuff, if you let those things bother you or halt you from being a friend with somebody or being whatever, like that's silly, because you might be missing out on something amazing. You could make history together. Bum, bum, bum.
Yep.
Corny.
I
That's so
did.
funny.
Some people,
Okay.
there's been some weird matches. Like, you would be surprised. My favorite local person that's famous is Robin Roberts. She's from Pass Christian, which is in the same
Really?
county as me. Mm-hmm.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. So, I love that. Now, I love the name of your podcast, and I can kind of guess where you go. How did you come up with it? I mean, common sense tells me. But what was your inspiration, or who is your Maw Maw, however you say?
Maw
What
Maw.
was your Mammal? What they say that in West Virginia too, however you say.
Yeah.
But who is she, and like what was your inspiration for calling it this?
So I always have some kind of weird like hustle idea in my mind. Some of them
Me
have come to
too.
fruition. Some of them have just hung out in the back burner. So Don't Tell Mama originally I thought would be like a YouTube thing where I cooked like recipes that were healthier versions of what our grandmas would cook in the South. And then I just like, that's too much work. But my best friends and my two best friends are sisters, Katie and Leah. They've moved away and I miss them every day. It's just not the same being the one like left behind here, if that makes sense. And so Leah lives in Phoenix. Katie now lives in Virginia. And I had the idea of us to do the podcast and use that same name because I've always liked that name, to talk about growing up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, growing up in the South, being like millennial women, and also kind of how what we grew up with or how the past is changing into the future and what we should kind of keep from the past and what should we discard and move on from into the future. So we've talked about all kinds of things. We've talked about hosting. We've talked about the holidays in different capacities. We've done ghost stories just for fun. We've talked about hurricanes. We've talked about Mardi Gras, which is a big thing where I'm from. We've had guests. We've had friends. We have this one series I really liked last spring called From Mississippi We'll Travel, where we found friends or people that we've connected with online that are from Mississippi but have traveled, kind of like I have, to talk about their experiences. And we just, we just have a good time, and it is a way we keep connected. Like we split the work 3 ways, so I don't have to edit every episode.
Oh, nice.
They help find guests. We take turns. We make scripts together, and it's just it's been such a fun project, and it keeps us together.
Oh, that's so sweet. I didn't know it was that sentimental. That's awesome. First of all, I love the idea that you had with the recipe thing. Maybe you should eventually do that if you have time.
Yeah.
Because that's such a smart idea, because he talks about, like, again, no offense to Mississippi, but if you look it up, it's like one of the top obesity states, like because of the food that they consume.
Oh yeah,
or it could
fried.
also, yep.
Vegetables have meat in them.
That's right.
I bet his
You
family
can't be
cooks really
adventurous.
good, though. I bet
Oh,
they
yes.
cook really good.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what he said. Yeah, I feel bad for being. See, I'm lucky. Look, nobody take this the wrong way. You might, I don't know. I'm lucky. I'm glad that I'm a white woman that puts seasoning in food because
yes.
because like we have this thing. It's really funny. Like he just said it the other day, and I don't want him to. He's not racist. He loves me, but he is not used to. You know what I'm saying? It's been 4 years. He's still not used to stuff. We got food from somewhere, and he said something about it seems like your cousin made this or something. And it meant that he doesn't even know my cousin, but he just meant like there's not I said it's not seasoned, and he goes, nope. And so that's the thing, right? So his family, yes, they cook so well. Like he grew up with a lot of family members because of his situation. And so his like aunt anime and like Big Mama and all these people. And so like the food and stuff. And then I'm like, I cannot cook like that, but it's okay. So he also is part Jamaican. So I've tried to make things, but guess what? I found out, everyone, that's restaurants have it. So I just buy it at the restaurant.
You probably find it in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, we do. There's a lot
a
of
lot.
Jamaican. Yeah. So that's the thing I love about Atlanta. So history wise, there's a lot of history and U.S. stuff that happened in Atlanta that is good and bad, sad and different things. But it's amazing. Like Martin Luther King Jr.'s house, the childhood home is here. I want to go there. There's a civil rights museum. There's I think there's even like a Holocaust museum. There's so many like right around me. Like everything is so close. And so yeah, there's so many awesome things. The Olympics was here, so we get to walk by. The Olympic rings are out in Centennial Park. It's really cool. Okay. So that's really sweet that you stay connected to your friends, and also because editing is not my jam, that you get to share the editing.
Yeah, and then one of my friends, her husband is a guitar player. Like he's a professional. Like he has a master, like a PhD in classical guitar, and so he is a boss with sound editing. Like a boss with sound edit. So if we have an issue with sound, we just give it to him and he handles it.
That's beautiful. Connections are awesome. Like it's really good to have connections with people. So okay, now I love names. And now what in the world is what in the hootenanny is my Sassy Starfish? I'm just joking. I'm just joking, everybody. Okay. What is it about?
So that one is like one of my old long-term projects. I think I started it back in like 2013, and originally it started out for me just to like show in like finds of old stuff I found, like home stuff, like antique finds, and and then it's kind of molded to where I was talking about some genealogy, talking about some history, some Gulf Coast stuff. Then I started talking about mindfulness, and it's just kind of, I haven't updated it. I think what I'm going to do with it is maybe just use it as a personal one later. And there's a couple of other things I do have a couple of other URLs I would like to use, like to just talk about history, for example, or just talk about genealogy. So eventually, if you check it, it'll probably just be split up some of the ideas, but I would just talk about whatever. I went really, really into it for about 6 months in 2019 and 2020. And then like algorithms changed and I just got fed up, to be honest with you. We can have real talk about that. Like you could be doing really good, and one source of traffic can be like sending a lot of readers your way, and then it'll just go.
Oh, yeah. I haven't figured this out yet. The algorithms. No, I really haven't. So why is it called? So it's about old things and different things, but why did you name it? Because Sassy is fun. I love Sassy. My daughter is so sassy. But why did you name it Sassy Starfish? I'm very curious about this. What is that significance? What does it mean? You just like starfish?
So I like starfish. I've always liked stars over anything. So
yeah,
like I'm also like, I don't know, I'm always like, I'm trying to think of a way to explain. I like things that are kind of popular, but kind of not. So like when everyone, maybe you might be around the same age as me, when everyone was into like the butterfly clips, I like dragonflies. for example.
Oh,
I've always liked stars and starfish. We don't have a lot of starfish. We do have them where I live. We don't have that many. I think I've only seen maybe one, like when we were on the boat like a while ago. But it's just a quirky, like fun name. I thought it was kind of catchy, and I just went with it.
of course it's catchy. I love it. It's amazing.
Yes.
I just didn't know if it like one time I saw a starfish and it changed my life. I don't know. I just didn't know.
Most of
Like
stuff isn't that thoughtful.
but
I just go over the.
That's okay.
The catchy title.
Hey, don't worry. So all of my titles have like 500 words in it, and it's not very fun. And it's even my emails. Like my emails are like 12 words long, and people are like, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Yes." So yeah. So it's all good. It doesn't matter. All right. So you are so cool. I love that you're very unique. And that's the thing. You don't have to be exactly like everybody. That's, again, boring.
So we don't
So,
all have to be one thing. Like I teach,
no.
English online most mornings, and then I go do the history stuff and do the podcast or whatever.
Aw. So I know someone that's an ESL teacher in high school in North Carolina. So what is your favorite thing about being an ESL teacher?
We're going to talk about different perspectives. If anyone has any preconceived negative thoughts about different cultures, be an ESL teacher, and they will blow you away no matter where that child is from. Because it's there's a lot of prejudice, I think, now in the U.S. against Muslim people.
Oh yeah.
And I have one little student from Algeria, and that is the sweetest family. That the mom is the nicest, and all my parents are stupid nice, but this mom is like super nice. They say the sweetest things and are so kind and accommodating. And then I've taught a lot of students. I began with all Chinese students originally when I began teaching online, and now I still have some Chinese students. But my husband and I went to China in 2019, and they hosted, they took us around some of the different families, and they put Southern hospitality to shame, which says a lot.
Wow. Listen here. Don't you bring up that you lived in a trailer. You've been to more countries than people have been to states. You're awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool to to be able to travel to different countries and make an impact everywhere and get to meet amazing people. That's that's so beautiful. I'm so happy to have met you, Mandy. Where can we find you? So you mentioned your podcast. Is it what streaming devices what is it on?
Currently it's on almost everything popular, like Spotify, Apple Podcast. We host through Anchor, so you can listen online through the web browser, anchor.fm / Don't Tell Maw Maw. We also have our social media. We do have Twitter, Instagram. We have an open Facebook page. We also have a group that's a closed group. All you got to do is answer one question to join it and agree to the rules, called Don't Tell Maw Maw Magnolia Lounge. And that's kind of like our community where I share quirky Gulf Coast things. This morning I shared where I'm from regionally. There's a lot of Croatian immigrants back in the turn of the late 1800s, early 1900s. I even could trace one side of my family to the Croatian immigrants, and they do something called pusheratas for Christmas. And pusheratas are like a fried fruitcake donut kind of thing.
Oh,
it's really good, but they're very specific to either celebrations or holidays. But I just saw a fundraiser the wildlife rehabilitation group is doing called Pusheratas for Possums. So that went on the group this morning because that is the most
for possums.
For possums.
Oh my god!
Possums. So we're on Don't Tell Maw Maw Magnolia Lounge. You can find me at my Instagram, my Sassy Starfish. I would say my preferred method of communication with people is Instagram, just because I feel like people are a little kinder on Instagram than other places on the internet.
Yeah, other intranets. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff now. I like Instagram. Okay. So do you have a website or anything for, I don't know if you do, but or anything like
Yep, I still
that?
have
Okay.
MySassyStarfish.com, and any other projects I'm doing, I put on tabs on that. You could go to the tabs,
Awesome.
and it'll kind of send you off to wherever else you can find me.
Okay, so you are fascinating. Mandy, this is so cool. I'm so
This was so
excited.
fun.
Thank you. You're
Yeah.
so fun. This was very fun. Again, no offense. I had I don't ever judge because I just love going with the flow. So I love,
Mhm.
talking to anyone. So but I was thinking like how would I when you come up with questions, like what am I gonna ask someone? But then I read your bio and I'm like, holy shnikes, like she's awesome. But if you like, oh, I'm a history major and that's all you told me, then I wouldn't know what to delve into. But so I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us. And there are listeners everywhere. I'm trying to think Algeria. So I had a boss that was from Algeria, but so far nobody from Algeria has listened. So shout it out and share it to your people. Cameroon has listened before. I'm trying to think of Scotland. I don't know.
It might
Anyways,
come
but
into the
yeah.
United Kingdom, like it might in your stuff might come out as
Ah,
United
okay.
Kingdom in your
Okay.
stats, maybe.
Okay. Well, that's so cool. So anyway, I'm excited that you have traveled the world. That is so fun. And that you've learned stuff from everywhere. And that just shows everyone. So like the fact that you brought up that you grew up, the first few years in a trailer, but look at where all you've gone. It doesn't matter. Your situation or your circumstance or your location at the time does not ever tell you what your destination is going to be. All of us could have amazing destinations, but we've been through hell and back to get to it, right? So
Hmm.
it's not really the journey. It's just like the destination. Where'd you get to? What are you doing now? And you're really making a difference and helping people. And you know way too much information. I'm just joking. I'm just
I know,
teasing you.
it's like
You're like
my
a
brain
big
sometimes is
yeah.
like bumping around.
Yeah, well, that's how mine is, but I think it's just the ADD. But it's not facts. It's just like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I don't know what it was in there. I don't know what's happening in there, but no, but that's amazing. And the fact that you remember all this stuff, I am impressed for real. So I think you're awesome. This was so fun, and you have like great energy, beautiful smile. You just seem like such a good person, and it's so great that you're helping all these kids doing English as a second language. That's what ESL stands for, right? So,
Hmm.
and just teaching history and all the things that you're doing, being a librarian, so cool. Connecting with your friends on your podcast and just awesome. Like live your dreams and keep coming up with your cool names and doing what you got to do, right? So, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for coming on. And sorry, I'm like, woo, I'm so silly, but sometimes it's a
Thank you for
little too
having
much for
me.
people. Of course, thank you. And I would like to talk to you again and about some other stuff. So if you ever go out past you do, but past the Gulf Coast, I would be interested in asking you some questions about other places. I was born in Hawaii too, so that's cool. But sure, there's a lot of history there. But I also we'll talk again. But I wanted to ask you about the Native American history which is so prominent there in Mississippi. But
Mm.
we'll just one. I forgot to ask you. So, how many was it? Would it be tribes? I know that's African, but what are they called? Ooey. So I know a lot of the towns
They
are
call them
named
nations
after
now.
nations.
I
Okay.
think
So, like Shibuda, isn't that a Native American or a lot of them are?
a
I
lot
don't
of
know
them
if that one
are.
is.
I can tell you locally some of ours.
Okay. What's just some of yours locally?
Biloxi is named after the Native American tribe. But what's interesting is the Biloxi tribe is a different language group. So they
Oh,
came from somewhere different than the other tribes in Mississippi, like the Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Cherokee. Uh, and I think Pascagoula is another one. We have a patron that has been studying archaeology for a long, long time, and he told me about when the explorers came, there were probably like a good 17 different Native American groups on the Gulf Coast, and most of them were actually they kind of were where they would go from place to place. They would just come in the winter to like fish and to get the
Wow.
oysters and things like that, and they would move on. Yeah, the Tunica Biloxi are still a tribe. They are a nation. They are located actually now in an island in Louisiana that is sinking. So there is definite need for their tribe, their nation to move, because how much land the Louisiana, the South Louisiana is losing due to different things. There's a lot of, we have a river called Cheetah-Buff, and if you try to spell it, it was like a spelling word, like the bonus spelling word when you were in 5th grade here. It probably means broken pot, possibly. I asked the same gentleman that question. Wow. There's a lot of different words. Pascagoula as well is named after the Native American tribe that was there. There's a lot, but there's a lot of Native American names. But then where I live too, there's a lot of French names as well.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's so awesome. I'm sad. Would have been sad if I skipped over that. So it's sad that a lot of those nations are not, that is very sad, but we talk about history, and that's another thing that they don't teach is what really, went down.
Obviously, because we still have Christopher Columbus Day, and the way we still celebrate and teach Thanksgiving.
Skibbity boo. I know. I just said like the other day, like my daughter didn't have off for it, but it still said Columbus Day on the calendar. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought we were, going away with that. But I guess not. So that's the sad thing, is that history, I think, is altered to fit a certain person, I'm not trying to get it too much into that. But anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of awesome Native American nations that are still around. And so the county that's next to me, like literally I can walk there in 2 seconds. I'm like right beside another county, and it's Cherokee County. And that's right where I am in Georgia. So we probably have some names here that I didn't know were Native American names, but I definitely knew that about Mississippi because my boyfriend told me, because he would say all these names and I would feel bad because I would say, what kind of name is that? And he's like, don't say that. It's a Native American. I'm like, oh, sorry. But it's just something I never heard of, and so that's a beautiful thing though, that they named those cities and towns after them. So, because it's a shame what happened. And that happens in so many countries. And my ex-boyfriend from Ghana used to tell me about Italy and Sicily and what happened when they would go to Africa. And I'm like, huh? Like, that's so sad. And, we don't get taught all these things.
Nope.
So anyway, well, thank you for looking up and knowing real history, and it's important that people have an understanding of facts, that even though some of them are very tragic, some are horrific and all those things, but things that really truly happened. I think as time goes on, they excuse me, my voice, they they've made movies about really amazing people in history, and a lot of them have been African Americans, but that you didn't even know about. And it's like, how did this happen in 1960? And I just found out about it in 2011 or whatever, and or 15 or whatever year. And it's just like, it's sad, but at least people are doing the research, right? So the information's available and people are doing the research. And so be it an author or a filmmaker, director, whatever, they're starting to find things out, or people are coming to them and saying, hey, do a story on so-and-so. And so I think that is absolutely important and necessary for, like you said, with the people with the genealogy, for it to go on and for that to be a thing. So it's like, we don't even know about it one day. That would be horrible if nobody ever found out about, So anyways, I just went off on a tangent. That happens a lot.
I tell people all the time. I tell my two, my two workers that I actually just recently got promoted to over the department, like back in August. So my
Yay!
two workers under me, I always say,
Congratulations.
like, I appreciate it. It was a long time. That's a whole other story. But my coworkers, I tell them, I'm like, what we do matter to people. What we do
Yes.
matter. I've had people trying to reconnect with lost loves. I've had the DNA tests now are so popular that my daddy I thought was my daddy wasn't my daddy. Now I got to redo my search for my real daddy. There's all kinds of different things. There's a lot of people that were stationed in on the Gulf Coast through Keesler that had fond memories. They want to go see if their house that they stayed in with their family or when they were stationed here is still standing. We get a lot of those requests, and trying to find the locations of people buried in certain cemeteries, which matters because some people it's closure for them.
It does matter. You're making a difference, and you're helping people. Like you said, closure is important. I just talked about it. I actually was just interviewed on literally this morning on a grief podcast. And she asked me about my brother's death. And so, he committed suicide and I witnessed it via telephone. And so that, like, forgiveness is important, but closure is also important. But she talked about, like, was lost. Like, how do you get like the person's gone, So that's really important to be it like information that they thought could be true and might be, like that stuff is important. I watched that show. Who is that? I love that guy. He's bald with glasses. And he does the ancestry with the celebrities.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Is it Who Do You Think You Are or something like that?
Yeah.
It's
like,
a PBS show.
I always cry. Like I'm like, oh, because it's so amazing. Like it's like it goes back so far. And my daughter's teacher from last year, she told me, what? Not the teacher, my daughter. That great, something like that. Lots of greats. Their great grandfather was on the Mayflower or something. And I was like, whoa, like great, whatever. And so, and there's some history that, we might say like everybody's different and we might say like, oh, that's horrible, but still being a part of that history, unless it's like, we don't want to talk about Germany and all that stuff. That's not good. But anyway, because I lived in Germany and that stuff was horrific too.
Yeah.
But sometimes you might find out something that
Jim Crow was pretty horrific. Yeah. Oof.
Ooh.
It was so bad.
But yeah, you might find out something that you're like, my family was part of that. Oh boy. But it's the truth, it's like, it's part of, but that's not how you are. Right. So even if you find out something negative or bad, that doesn't define who you are, but it gives you some side of like, could give you information to something, you know what I'm saying? And be like, oh, okay. But yeah, so all of it is fascinating and everything.
And working where we work, we have to have two sets of goggles on. We have to look at it from the perspective of the time. We have to look at it from our perspective looking back. And it doesn't make it okay. I'm going to preface this because it could come out wrong. But I've told this story several times on my podcast and another podcast. Like I had a great-grandfather who was county supervisor for 30-something years. He was the president. He was like one of the big people who got the beach going, the man-made beach going. And he was actually pretty... I wouldn't use the word liberal, but he was actually pretty sympathetic to the Black cause and the Black communities in Biloxi in particular. Like in the parade, like when they did the parades, he'd get off and like shake people's hands on the Black side of the neighborhood. He would go like to the Catholic church and like sit for like, like baptisms and things like that. And there's been and even we found a newspaper article recently when the group of civil rights, activists on the coast were trying to desegregate the beach, basically. And he didn't say, no, we can desegregate the beach, but he, at least you could tell he was definitely not the person burning crosses in the yards. He was like, I'm very sympathetic. I want us to live peacefully together. I think maybe we could consider giving them a part, to go to. Like I said, not perfect. He definitely did blackface shows too. But for what I've been told by multiple people and from reading his, actually his words in the newspaper, it was pretty interesting to see that there was people that kind of fell on a different grayscale than what you read about.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a lot of people that, stood up for the rights in the South, of Black people, or helped people, or, or at the counters with them and all that stuff. And so that, it's all important. It's sad that that happened. So sad that people
I'm not
treated...
making it okay. I'm not making it okay that he was in blackface shows or anything like that, but that's just what I know about him.
Yeah, you're just telling facts. I mean, and you can't change what happened anyway. So it's like, just like people, people don't agree with suicide. Nobody's going to be like, suicide's good. But when I talk about it, people can judge me for my brother committing suicide, but do it if you want. But I'm trying to help people. I want to talk to young people and say, hey, why do you feel this way? Why are you know what I'm saying? So don't worry about that. There's nothing you can do about. Yeah. So it's like, you can't change history, literally. Which,
yeah, exactly.
Another horrible pun. Another horrible one. So yeah, but I mean, like that's what happened in the church. I couldn't say that my brother committed suicide. I couldn't say that. And it's like, that's my truth. That's what happened. That's what changed some things in my life. I almost dropped out of college. I wouldn't have became a nurse. I wouldn't, and so, but I'm not going to hide that. Like, yeah, it's like shunned, like, it was so horrible, but that's what that's the truth, and again, now I can help people, and I maybe help families with like signs and like certain things that happened or how he was acting, but and might be able to help someone or help prevent somebody from doing that. I hope and pray that's one of my goals. And so, I mean, you can't change what happened. What you can do is you can take those facts and you can do whatever with them, but you can't. I
tell my coworkers all the time, we have to bear witness to this. It's painful. It's painful on us. It actually kind of can take, we actually kind of have to be like almost like medical staff with this when we're reading some of these things that have happened. Because a lot of people call us and they want us to research the worst day that happened in this person's life, literally, or one of the worst events in these people's lives. Yeah. So we have to take it on, think about it, research it, but we also have to kind of be able to let it go at the end of the day, or we'll go nuts ourselves. It's not the same as dealing with face-to-face trauma, or, people who've had these horrible things happen to us, but it's pretty close in the mental space of it, because we have to take on, consider what this was like. And it gets me every once in a while. I do twice a week. Me and my coworkers put together historic photographs from our collection it's on the Biloxi Library Facebook page, and I do a little research on it. My coworker has been doing a huge negative collection from a local photographer. So it runs from late 1950s, early 1980s, 40,000 negatives.
Wow.
My coworker's just been scanning and working on this collection for years. And lately my coworker's been submitting some stuff, because I have a hard time finding stuff around the holiday times. Or stuff I want to use for these posts for the holiday time. So I got one, and it was the CBs in Gulfport returning from Vietnam. It's just a long line of CBs returning from Vietnam, waiting in line, coming home for the first time. And I'm reading the article, and then I realized that they're just home temporarily and they're about to get shipped back. And I just started crying, in my office. It just hit me in the feels that day.
Yeah. And that's so sweet. That's good that you are empathetic, and that's what I need to be as a nurse. And you're right. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it better or worse that you're seeing that is, you can imagine yourself there, right? So that's what empathy is. That's not any different than me when a patient's telling me, hey, I have cancer, hey, this is happening, da 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 da, and I can feel it with them. Or the guy that tried to commit suicide, and I think about my brother and the situation with that, and I try to, it's the same thing. Like, even the words, if you're reading words and you can imagine yourself in that state or going through whatever they're going through or whatever, that's a beautiful thing. That gives you're empathetic, and you're doing a great job. So yeah, it does make you feel some kind of way. And unfortunately, I'm so sensitive. So lots of stuff makes me feel a certain way, and I try to be tough in front of people. And just like with you, like if the family member's in front of you, you probably won't cry hysterically, but you can when you're thinking about all those things, like you said, or some of the historic things. Like, it's just, I don't know, just all the things. I mean, people went to, so my ex-boyfriend's from Ghana, and he's from the capital, Accra. And I knew people, which was so crazy, in, was it Ohio or Maryland? I think Ohio, maybe, or Maryland, Ohio. That, I'm talking about New Martinsville, Ohio, tiny little town. I mean, West Virginia, my bad. New Martinsville, West Virginia, tiny little town, okay? Lots of people are racist there. That's just how it is. I'm sorry. I have people that listen to it from there, and they're just, it's different. So they went to the slavery camp. Like, they went and saw them in Africa, in Accra. And I was like, they took pictures. You can imagine yourself if you're in this little tiny, like, oh my gosh, And so it's a picture, but you can put yourself in that situation, especially if the people are in it and all that, like you saw. So that, I think what you're doing, again, is beautiful work. Keep up the good work. Thank you for helping all these people. Thank you for all your knowledge and your studying and and your schooling, and you keep going. And I'm really proud of you, because it takes a lot to feel that and keep going, and because you know what the purpose is, right? So you're like, no, I got to get this done. And I've got to, because I'm sure there's some horrific stuff that comes up, especially pictures I cannot imagine, like, because you just can get sick to your stomach and be like, oh my gosh, this really happened. Like, it's reality, and you reading all that history makes it so real. And it's got to be emotional, but you get through it. So good job. I don't know if I get through
away. It just, it can be tough, but yeah. Aww. But I'll tell you what, nurses and doctors are my heroes. I didn't say this for the podcast. This is just a side note. I had in 2015, I had medical issues, and I was just ignoring them. And I had primary hyperaldosteronism. So my body was losing losing potassium and keeping sodium. Oh, no. And I went to the ER my mom took me to the ER thinking I was having a stroke.
Wow.
And through all that, like, I had to have so much blood work done and so many tests and different specialists and everything. And it was just like such a thing. And it was definitely the nurses that got me through that. I had the one poor nurse at the end for for the endocrinologist I talked to probably every day for like 5 or 6 weeks before I could have my surgery.
Aw. Well, I'm glad that you're okay, and I'm glad they figured it out. It's scary when you're going through
courteous of things.
Good. So. Yeah. Seeing a different point of view, like when you're laying down and you can't do stuff for yourself, it gives you a different perspective, Well, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on. And again, we'll talk again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
And you have a fantastic day.